All right. Welcome to Saints Signs Happening. Week, this is a free 3-week course. This is week 1, day 2. And we are going to be talking about a prophecy of the U.S. splitting into 4 nations. And so I knew that about this prophecy about the year 2000. And And I was wondering, is it really the United States? And as the time went on, around 2015, I said, absolutely, it is the United States. And oh my gosh, we need to make everybody we can aware of this. And fortunately, uh, it's recorded in the book of Daniel, chapter 8. And so you think about how many people believe in the Bible. And so we have a lot of people that we can talk to and get them up to speed on this prophecy. And of course, yesterday we had went over um, Revelation chapter 17, verses 10 and 11, and then Daniel chapter 11, verses 1 through 4. And we touched on some other verses just to show that Daniel chapter 11, the angel talks about a lot of kings, but within the many kings is a succession of 8 kings. Now, uh, in the presentations, you got a lot of resources, personal revelation, you got the scriptures, you got the church leaders, you have the 210 prophetic point poster, you got this free 3-week course, Saint Signs Happening. You got the Saints Signs Happening group that you're going to be part of as we get through after we get through these 3 weeks, and that's so super exciting. I'm also super excited about ai.saintssigns.happening.com. You go over there and there's a box where you can type in your question, and and AI is going to look for the answers based upon the material I have put in there. So it's like asking, Lowell, what about this? Or Lowell, what about that? So I'm pretty excited about that. Um, and it's based on the ebook, The Prophetic Playbook Story. And you can read that for free over at propheticstory.com. We'll get you right over there. It's going to ask you for um, a passcode. The passcode is the word Christ with a capital C. And then you have to click login. And but now I'll get you right in there. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about Daniel chapter 8. Yeah, it talks about a war between Persia and Grecia. Just like Daniel chapter 11 talked about a war between Persia and Grecia. However, Daniel chapter 8 also mentions a king from Media. So in Daniel chapter 8, verse 1 and 2 is an intro. And but verse 3 though is about our day. So this is really, really important. In verse 3 it says, Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river, a ram, which had 2 horns. And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. Fortunately, in verse 20, we read that an angel gave the interpretation. The angel says, The ram which thou sawest having 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia. So I knew that the Persia king was Kamini, and he's been ruling since 1989. And so ever since about the year 2000, I have been looking for someone in the Middle East area, more into the old um, Medea ancient area, to become higher than Kamini. And get this right here. Okay, so then in the you can see in the picture here, you have the old ancient Medea area, and Turkey is up in the top left portion of that old Medea area. And so so verse 3 is talking about someone becoming higher. Well, Erdogan, president of Turkey, became higher than Khamenei July 17th, 2016, when Muslim scholars worldwide declared Erdogan to be the supreme leader for the entire Muslim world. That's huge. That is so huge. We see the fulfillment of Daniel chapter 8, verse 3. I want you to think about how many times you've gone to the scriptures or someone's talked about this chapter or this section in this verse has been fulfilled regarding our day. This is so huge. The other thing is, and I think I mentioned this yesterday, is worth repeating. In Daniel chapter 7, 8, and 11, and Revelation chapter 17, there's over 40 unique individuals referenced regarding our day. Over 40 of them. And yet you go around and you ask people, how many of those 40 can you identify? Gosh, get a collage of videos of the expression on people's faces. That was awesome. Now, uh, so verse 3 fulfilled. What about verse 4? And I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. So we're talking Khamenei of Iran and Erdogan of Turkey, pushing to the west, north, and south, and the east is not mentioned. Well, Erdogan became president August of 2014. At that time, the United States was fighting ISIS. Turkey was fighting ISIS. Iran was fighting ISIS. And what's been going on since that time? Erdogan and Khamenei have been pushing west, north, and south. They've been going into Iraq, they've been going into Syria, um, Gaza, and Lebanon, and other places. And so that prophecy, Daniel chapter 8, verse 4, has been in the process of fulfillment for over a decade. Isn't that awesome to be able to identify chapter and verse and go, okay, we're moving along. Well, what about the next verse? And as I was considering, behold, a he goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Well, what is that talking about? The angel, verse 21, gives the interpretation. The rough goat is the king of Grecia. Who's Grecia? The United States. And the goat and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. So in that box with the gold around it, it says the U.S. has had many presidents, kings. The angel is trying to get Daniel and us to focus on a very specific time. That time is the time when a U.S. president attacks Khamenei and Erdogan and breaks them. So we are waiting for that prophecy to be fulfilled. But I want you to think about President Trump. Back in June, um, he had battleships that were to the west of Iran. He had the thousands of Tomahawk missiles. He had the F-16s, the F-35s, the B-2s, the B-52s. And, uh, and he walloped areas within Iran. He didn't take out Khomeini. He didn't take out Erdogan. But we did see a sampling of um, of a Trump attack. And doesn't that Trump attack sound very much like the description of verse 5? Uh, the he goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Well, let's see what happens here. In verse 6, and he, so this would be Trump, came to the ram, Erdogan, and Kamini, that had the two horns, and which I had seen standing by the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. And I saw him, Trump, come close unto the ram, Erdogan and Kamini. And he, Trump, was moved with choler, anger against him, the ram, and smote the ram, Erdogan and Kamini, and brake his two horns. He broke Erdogan and Kamini. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hands. So that sounds like a Trump attack to me, and I think you would agree with that. Now comes the mic drop. After this war, that is quite decisive, it sounds like, we read in verse 8, therefore the he goat waxed very great. After the war, Trump waxes great. And when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And for it came up four notable ones towards the four winds of heaven. Do you see what we're talking about here? We got the answer in verse 22. The angel says, now that being broken, whereas four stood up for it, four kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. We are talking about the split up of the United States. This is huge. And it rhymes with their Nephi, chapters 6 and 7. So the brethren talk about how the events of 3rd Nephi will resemble events in our day. Well, in chapter 6 and 7, we read about when wicked judges were killing the righteous prophets without permission. The wicked judges were caught and were going to be tried. However, the chief judge was murdered and the government collapsed, and the people went into tribes. Now we can see now, we can now see a connection with 3 Nephi chapter 6 and 7 in our day. Trump is going after the wicked judges and many other wicked people. Trump is going to get broken. We won't go into tribes. We will split into four nations. And I want you to ponder on this here. What will happen to Social Security, Medicare, prescription drugs, and welfare, and the list goes on? What states will be part of which of the four countries? If we don't have a military ready for our new country, China and Russia could easily attack us. in a vulnerable time. Isn't it interesting? In 1984, a man who was a lawyer and a judge, who was very astute in the U.S. Constitution, was called to be an apostle. Now, about 41 years later, as we are coming up to the U.S. splitting into four nations, President Dallin H. Oaks will be the first counselor or the prophet when that event happens. Isn't it interesting? If the federal government collapses in early 2026, for example, uh, it will have been about 7 years from the time of President Oaks' talk from the April 2019 General Conference, General Priesthood session titled, Where Will This Lead? Keeping in mind the U.S. to split into four nations, please read and or listen to that talk. President Oaks talks, in President Oaks' talks, he described a true story and saw a parable of sorts. College students on campus gathered around a tree, watching an Irish setter sneaking up on a squirrel playing around the base of the tree. The students watched, and as time went on, uh, we'll just say the squirrel was gone. President Oak said, anyone in that crowd could have warned the squirrel at any time by waving his or her arms or crying out, but none did. They just watched while the inevitable outcome got closer and closer. No one asked, where will this lead? When the predictable occurred, all rushed to prevent the outcome, but it was too late. Tearful regret was all they could offer. That true story is a parable of sorts. It applies to things we see in our own lives and in lives and circumstances around us. As we see threats creeping up on persons or things we love, we have the choice of speaking or acting or remaining silent. It is well to ask ourselves, where will this lead? Where the consequences are immediate and serious, we cannot afford to do nothing. We must sound appropriate warnings or support appropriate preventive efforts while there is still time. So, I'm here to empower you, to help empower you, to know for yourself the general order the prophetic events play out. I want to help empower you to be protected from false interpretations by well intended people or those with bad intentions. I'm also here to help empower you to work with Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Ghost in keeping the first great commandment. And so, uh, if you haven't already done so, I encourage you to go to the website, um, saintsbootcamp.com, and sign up for the free 3-week course on Saints Building Superpowers. And I think that you're going to find it just amazing. It's about keeping the first great commandment first, and the powers and the blessings, the joy, the happiness, the peace that uh, it affords us in doing that. Now, um, get this right over here. Give me just a second. We're going to go ahead and speed through this right here. Um, where will this lead? Okay, going to go through this here. All right. So that's it. That's where we're at. This is the end of day two presentation. I thank you for being here. Tomorrow is it's so exciting, and we're going to tie in more things. So I hope that you can make it tomorrow, and I hope and pray that you have a wonderful evening filled with the Spirit and rejoicing always. Take care, guys.